see this guy the other night on the Oscars, won the Oscar for Best Musical Score for Oppenheimer. A guy goes by the name of Ludwig Göransson. You know, he gives a speech, gives a nice speech and everything, but then he says, to my parents, thank you for giving me guitars and drum machines instead of video games. Now, it got some laughs, a couple of chuckles, people clapped, whatever. Didn't really land or not land. It just was there, moved on. But this was tweeted out today. It's got a bunch of video game people, fans, and creators upset, to some extent anyway. The degree to which people are actually upset, I can never figure out, but they're complaining about it on Twitter. How about that? I have a couple of things to say about this. The first one is that if your parents gave you guitars and drum machines instead of video games and they named you Ludwig, there's a very good chance that they were living out their dreams and fantasies through you, my son. But that said, what about what he says, right? What he's implying has been an accusation thrown at video games since the beginning. They're time wasters. They bring no value. They are just vapid. At some point, you would have thought we would have gotten beyond that, given how many people play video games today. And then I really have to question and ask, if I'm being real honest, does the guy have a point? Do video games actually offer us anything of value except escape, except a way to pass some time? And if that's all they offer, is that a real problem? Now, I have talked about video games being more than just reflex tests since I started working in games back in the 90s. I believe that to this day, and I can cite you examples. The first time I ever saw this sort of metaphor in storytelling and play mechanics was this game, September 12th. It's a little flash game, and all it is you have one button and you move the cursor around this Middle Eastern village, bazaar, what have you, and you drop bombs on the terrorists, and at least you try to. And that's it. That's all you can do in the game, and there's no win condition. There's no lose condition. All it is, though, as you can see, whenever you drop bombs, you kill not just the terrorists, but you kill innocents. And the innocents gather around the other innocents, like their family and friends, who are dead, and they start crying. And then, lo and behold, after a couple of seconds, they become terrorists themselves. And you can't play this game without, through mechanics, understanding and appreciating, it's not the world's deepest message, but it's a pretty fucking good one, and it's much more effective when you encounter it through gameplay. To me, this game, which I'm sure a number of you have played, it's brilliant, it's Inside. It is one of the best examples and one of the most just powerful examples of storytelling through gameplay and messaging and metaphor and meaning through gameplay, because you literally are forced to experience the humiliation, the sensation, the tragedy of conformity, but you only can survive this section if you conform. Previously in the game, you've been running and swimming and controlling objects like submarines and things, and now the only way you can get past this section is to become one of these sort of zombie humans that clearly is not in a good place in their life. And as a mechanic, there's nothing to do here except at the right time push the stick forward, and then when you get into the yellow zone, you hit the jump button and you jump. And ultimately, it's fascinating because it really does, at least for me, it made me start to think about, there are times in life, which I despise this is true, but it's true, where you have to conform if you want to survive, whether that's in business or actual real life is obviously, your mileage may vary, but I just thought this was brilliant. This is a straight up commercial title. It's Desperados III, one of my favorite games of the year. It is a isometric strategy game, very much in the vein of old school games like Jagged Alliance and Commandos and whatnot. Just brilliant game. But that aside, though, this is the final boss. And as you can see, you are, that's you as the cowboy there, and then that's your enemy who you've been tracking the whole game in the pink hat. And his bad guys are surrounding you, right? And they're basically like, look, you guys have to have a showdown. If you pull out your gun, he's faster than you, he'll kill you. And so the whole story of the game of like 15 missions has really been about this guy Cooper, the main guy, who really is kind of a loner and wants to try to do everything on his own. And ultimately, he starts to rely on this band of outlaws and friends and whatnot that he's pulled together. And the only way to win this mission, it is a very hard boss to kill because you have to have that moment in your brain that clicks where you go, oh my God, I have to shoot all of these enemies at the same time. And once that clicks and you go, oh, I have to use all of his friends and him, because you get one shot at it and you can't miss, and you have to do it at the same time. And it is such a satisfying feeling, not just from a game solve standpoint, but from a standpoint of going, holy cow, the message of the game, the story of the game, which is about no man is an island, is literally expressed through the way you complete the game. So the character Cooper arrives at the completion of his character arc. At the same time, you arrive at an experiencing of his arc through gameplay. It's fucking brilliant. And you can tell that to a kid or a student of history in a book, or you can have them actually have this experience and go, I get it now better than anything else. I am not the guy to say that video games cannot and should not use their insanely powerful, unique aspect, which is interactivity, to push gaming's ability to affect people beyond just being an escapist time waster. I'm there. You don't have to convince me. But I will tell you this, though. Most games don't do it, and that's bad enough. People don't think about it. And before you come at me and say, well, that Desperados thing, you're just making that shit up, Jaffe. Nobody intended. I interviewed the guy. I'll put a link. It's right up there. I interviewed the leader designer of this fucking game. He told me exactly what he intended. You've got to work with every single member in a very specific way. And to me, that is the brilliance of gameplay storytelling, is that this is a metaphor for what the actual character arc is, and you as a player have no choice but to go along for that emotional ride with him. Was that intentional?
Wait, so that game design metaphorical mechanic was intentional? That's almost as smart as I am. Almost.
Will you shut up, man? Just like this video, turn on notifications and subscribe to the channel. Oh, and consider
for fuck's sake, you senile fuck. The word you're looking for is subscribe. Jesus, anyway, consider a fucking membership.
Was that intentional? Or was that just like, oh yeah, it kind of worked, Jaffe, but it's just a cool puzzle?
No, that is actually intentional, yeah. So we look at...
How do you not go to IGN and GameSpot? How do you not just yell from the mountaintops like, look what we did? You didn't nominate us for Best Writer. Look what we fucking did. Anyway, keep going. That was intentional.
Yeah.
That was intentional.
Yeah, it was intentional. So where we do it with these things is we look at what we have in the game and what would make what we have in gameplay, basically, and how that can translate to the story. So we try to build the story around the gameplay. And this is often very hard.
Unlike books, unlike movies, we are not trained, taught, it's not celebrated, it's not graded well in school to look at video games as a deeper art form. And that's a problem, okay? But a bigger problem, though, and I think where this guy has a point, is a bunch of the people going around talking about the cinematic games, or, putting their own anecdotal stories. Like, oh, when Eris died, my sister was really sick and she almost died too, and that allowed me to get in touch with my grief and my emotions. Or I've had people tell me, oh, Kratos got me into working out, or Kratos taught me never to give up, and this and that and the other. It's not that those stories are not valid and wonderful to hear and appreciate it, but there's nothing inherent to video games that allowed those narratives to land with these people. They just happened to be playing video games and the narratives were in those games. I do worry sometimes that a lot of times people mistake the window dressing and the set dressing of artistry and importance for actual artistry and importance. I think, if you ever watch the movie Sullivan's Travels, about a film director who makes these wonderful comedies the world loves, and then one day he wakes up and is like, I want to make something serious. I want to leave something behind. I want to make something meaningful that matters. And what he learns as he goes all around the country trying to find his inspiration for his tragedy is he sees how much joy his comedies have brought to people. And I think video games do a lot of the same. I think to embrace that and own that and be proud of that, if you've worked on games or you love games, is excellent. To give people escape, to give people an exit from their day-to-day is quite noble. But I still think we can appreciate that. We can appreciate the individual people's anecdotes about video games and still appreciate that there is kind of a lack of nutrition in most games. Not because they're not capable, but because either A, no one thinks or cares to put it there, B, no one's been educated enough in sort of a mechanical metaphor to actually see the value of putting it there, or people have gotten confused by the window dressing of these more, important Oscar bait type games, and they think the cutscenes and the music and the production value, all of which is brilliant, is how you put it there. But I think all you have to do is look at this fellow on your screen here, Ludwig, and recognize if we valued games as delivery tools of more meaning, if we knew how to do it and actually put it into practice in more and more games, and if we stopped telling people how important and artistic some of these games are that's just based on the window dressing, I think it makes sense what he's saying. Why would he think anything else? Unless you're a core gamer and you've dived deep into the medium, his position is not incorrect. And I think we, as a industry I was once involved in, as a guy who talks about the industry, as a fan of the industry and the games, I think we serve ourselves better not pushing back on a guy like this, but instead actually going, why don't we do this more? Because it's really fucking hard, by the way. It's really fucking hard. I've tried it. I mean, maybe people are born with the brain for it, but I struggled when I tried to do it in some of the games I worked on. Sometimes you do it by accident. But I think it's important. I think it's very, very important. And here's what's really fascinating, that one of the designers of Inside, he's worked on a bunch of fucking big games, Jack Chapman, he says, I really hate how games are still viewed as this time-wasting apparatus. He tweeted this out about this. Of all the people who has a right today that's complaining about this, he's one of them, because he worked on a game that actually shows it can be more than that. And that game, Inside, came out, 6-7 years ago? I mean, every year you get a couple of indie games, but this is one of the reasons I guess it matters when we celebrate, when the critics celebrate. Oh, and again, I loved Last of Us Part 2. I'm not knocking it. I loved Corey's God of War. My God of War had a bunch of this pathos and stuff in it. I'm not knocking those games. But when you get a Game Awards or a DICE Awards, even worse, or a GDC Award, and those awards are celebrating the performative games that suggest the import and the art and the meaning, but don't really deliver it to most people who experience it. And you're not even snubbing the ones that actually do it through mechanics. Most of these people who vote on these fucking things and nominate them don't even know that those games exist. That's a problem. I don't like it. His name is Ludwig. Come on now. Let's not... Come on. I mean, at least he has an Oscar, because with a name like that, what the fuck else he got?